What if I told you that something as simple as light could be the key to healing one of the toughest injuries out there, a traumatic brain injury? I know, it sounds a little like science fiction, right? But believe it or not, new research is looking into exactly that. So let's dive into this really fascinating possibility. Okay, so before we get to the potential solution, we really need to wrap our heads around the problem itself. We're talking about traumatic brain injury, you'll hear it called TBI, and, well, it's a massive, massive challenge. And look, this isn't some rare condition. TBI affects millions of people all over the world, and it can cause just a huge range of debilitating problems. The really frustrating part for both patients and their doctors is that even though it's so common, the options for actually treating it are surprisingly limited. It's just a really stubborn, tough nut to crack. So, when your traditional treatments aren't quite cutting it, you gotta start thinking outside the box, right? Researchers are looking in some really unexpected places for a breakthrough. And that brings us right back to that wild idea. What if? What if we could use light to help the brain heal itself? Now, this whole idea has a pretty fancy scientific name. It's called photobiomodulation. Yeah, I know, it sounds super complicated, but I promise the basic idea behind it is actually pretty simple. So first things first, we're not just talking about any old light bulb here. Photobiomodulation, or PBMT for short, uses really specific kinds of light to basically give the body's own healing process a jumpstart. And here's the best part, it's not invasive. That means no surgery, no needles, nothing breaks the skin. It's all about encouraging the body to heal itself just from the outside in. Okay, so how in the world does this actually work on your brain cells? Well, think of it like this. After an injury, your brain cells are damaged and they're running on empty, they're low on energy. When this special light is applied, those struggling cells can actually absorb the light's energy. It's almost like plugging them in to recharge. And that boost is exactly what they need to get back to work, doing what they do best, healing. So that's the theory. And it sounds pretty amazing, right? But the big question is, does it actually hold up in the real world? To figure that out, researchers did something called a systematic review. Basically, they went out and gathered up all the best, high-quality studies on this topic to see what all the evidence, when you put it together, really says. And they were super strict about it, too. They combed through 4 huge scientific databases, and they were only looking for one thing: randomized human trials on TBI patients. They threw out all the animal studies because they wanted to see the effects on people. And on top of that, they checked every single study for potential bias to make sure the data was solid. All right, so after all that careful filtering and sifting, what did they find? Well, the results are definitely encouraging. But as you're about to see, the story's a little more complicated. The findings kind of raise just as many questions as they answer. First off, let's just talk numbers for a second, because the scale here is important. This wasn't some tiny little test. The review pulled together data from a total of 959 patients. That is almost 1,000 people, so we're looking at a really solid chunk of human evidence here. Now here's where it gets really interesting. It turns out not all light is created equal. The review found that different types of light had different effects. For instance, patients who got blue light therapy, they reported sleeping better, having less insomnia, and feeling less tired. But then the folks who got near-infrared light, that's a type of light we can't even see with our eyes, they reported better thinking skills and even better blood flow in their brains. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, but what about the big question with any new treatment? Is it safe? Well, this is a huge deal. Across almost 1,000 people, the therapy seemed to be incredibly well tolerated. The only side effects they really saw were mild things, like the occasional headache. For any new therapy, that is a fantastic sign. So let's recap. We've got promising results, a great safety record. Sounds like a total home run, doesn't it? Well, not so fast. Because when the researchers started digging into the details of how these studies were done, they found that the picture was actually a bit of a mess. And this really gets to the heart of the problem. You had some studies using blue light, others were using red light, and then you had another group using near-infrared light. It's like everyone was trying to bake the same cake, but they were all using a completely different recipe. It makes it really, really hard to compare the results. And this all leads us to the researchers' final verdict, and you can tell they're being very careful with their words. They basically say, look, this therapy seems safe, and it seems like it could be really effective, but we can't say for sure how useful it is in a clinic yet. And why are they so cautious? You guessed it, all those inconsistent methods. So let's just break that down one more time. The problem isn't that the therapy doesn't work. The problem is we don't know the best way to make it work.
You've got different light wavelengths, different treatment times, different frequencies. There's just no standardized rule book that everyone is following. Like we said, everyone's baking with their own recipe, and we don't know which one is the winner yet. Okay, so if the research is this promising but tangled mess, how do we fix it? How do we untangle this web? Well, the good news is the researchers have a very clear idea about what needs to happen next.
Honestly, the solution is pretty straightforward. Everyone needs to get on the same page. The experts from around the world need to come together and create one standardized protocol, a single official recipe that every researcher can use. That way, we can finally get results that are clear, easy to compare, and tell us exactly what works.
Which brings us back to the big question we started with. The potential is absolutely there. You can see it shining through all this messy data. So if everyone can get together and focus their efforts, will we one day see light therapy become a standard, powerful tool for healing the brain? Well, only time and some really good, coordinated science will tell.